Hello, how are you today? Happy New Year! It's time for a new episode of the Quiet as Mouse book club today. Today I'm going to be talking about my 2025 reading highlights. The Quiet as Mouse book club has been a little quiet over the last few months. I was a bit ill in the second half of the year, but I'm happy to say that this did not affect my reading progress. This has probably been my most successful reading year ever. I made a video in March about my relationship with reading, which I will link to somewhere. But long story short, I was in a reading slump for a very long time, but this year I am back with a vengeance and making up for lost time. So I have my stats from Storygraph here. Shout out to Storygraph. I recommend them for all of your reading, documenting your reading, recording your reading needs. So in 2025 I read, drumroll, 76 books with an average reading time of 6 days. All but one of these books were fiction. I am not a big reader of non-fiction books, and 57 of these books I read digitally, so on my Kobo. Of those, 42 of them were library books that I got using the Libby app, and 15 were books that I bought on the Kobo, and then I also read 18 physical print books, and 12 of those I got from the library, and 6 I own myself. And one book was an audiobook, and that book was also the lone non-fiction book, and I got it from the library using the Libby app. In terms of genre, I mentioned at the start of the year that I was planning on delving quite a lot into romantasy in 2025, as it was a subgenre that wasn't really so prevalent the last time I was reading regularly. So most of the books I read this year were romantasy, with romance being the next most read genre for me. And the other thing I want to mention before we start, that's right, we haven't even started yet, is that I was not super intentional, if that's the word, about the books that I picked to read this year. Back in the day, when I was last a big reader, I used to be pretty picky about what I read. I would try and not read two quite similar books near each other. I tried to have quite a lot of variety in what I read. I used to alternate between classic and modern, back when I was doing the Quiet as Mouse book club every fortnight. But now, the biggest factor in my reading and, choosing what I'm reading next is just the library and when my library holds come in. So it might not seem like much, but it's been a very dramatic change for me and a noticeable change for me. But I've really loved it, and I think I'm just going to continue with this way. I think it's really upped the amount I've read, because there's been no faffing about between books, trying to decide, the perfect book for me to read now. There's been no holding off on reading any books because I'm not in the mood. Those library book deadlines, they don't care. It does mean that there are a few books that I own that I just haven't got to reading yet, even though I'm really excited to read them, just because of, library books with deadlines. And it also means that I have more DNF books this year than I ever have before. I have abandoned 5 books this year before reaching the end of them, and I think in my life prior to 2025 I can't remember not finishing over 5 books. And Storygraph tells me that I abandoned those books after reading about 39% of them, or having read them for 4 days. But this isn't a video about my reading lowlights of 2025. This is a video about my reading highlights of 2025. I did a segue. Did you like it? I have compiled a list of 10 books or series that I would describe as my highlights of my reading life in 2025. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are my highest rated books of 2025. I'm not even sure that I would put a couple of them in my top 10 favourites of 2025, but they are the highlights. They are the books that I enjoyed the most, or that were the most surprising, that I got the most out of. It'll make sense when I start. So, number 1 on my list of 2025 reading highlights is Welcome to the Hyeonumdong Bookshop by Wang Bo-rum. This is the first book that I read in 2025, and it is the book that broke me out of my reading slump. It's about a woman who opens a bookshop in a small residential area, and it's about how it helps her and how it helps other people who frequent the bookshop. And basically it reminded me of my love of books. It reminded me how much I used to get out of reading, how I didn't find it a chore. I wouldn't describe it as one of my favourite books of 2025. It's a cozy book. It's quite slow paced and chill. I tend to prefer my books with a bit more excitement and peril generally. But this video exists because I read this book in January 2025. I have read 76 books this year because I read this book in January 2025. So it is one of my reading highlights, and arguably the most important reading highlight, because it, changed my life. Oof. Second on my list of reading highlights is Don't Touch My Hair by Emma Dabiri, notable for being the sole non-fiction book that I read this year and the sole audiobook. The book is about black women and black hair, and it's kind of a cross between a memoir and an essay collection and a history book. The audiobook is narrated by Dabiri herself, and she is an excellent narrator of the audiobook. It has a very conversational style that I loved and that kept me interested in the audiobook, as a person who struggles to concentrate when reading audiobooks generally. And I want to buy the physical book at some point because it has pictures. But yes, very interesting book, especially if you're someone like me who doesn't have the lived experience of being a black woman or having black hair. And it's definitely one of my reading highlights of the year. It broke through my fear of non-fiction. Next up, number 3 is Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. This is, I think, my favourite romance book that I read in 2025. It's an accidental pregnancy book. I've not read an accidental pregnancy book before, which, helped it to stand out for me among romances. And it's about Win and Bo who meet at a Halloween party. They both have limb differences and they're dressed up as pirates, and they have a one-night stand and a pregnancy happens and it follows the pregnancy and their relationship. And I really thought it was a fantastic book and I recommend it. Number 4 now, appropriately, is Four Ruined Realms by May Corland. This is the sequel to Five Broken Blades. It's part of the Broken Blades trilogy. The third book in the trilogy is apparently out already. I didn't know this until I was scripting this video. These books have been released surprisingly quickly, so I haven't read book 3 yet. The series is based on Korean folklore and history, and it's about a group of misfits, liars, assassins, rogues who have to come together to defeat an evil king. I have talked about these books in videos before, so apologies. I quite liked the first book, Five Broken Blades. All of the fight scenes were described super well, but some other things were not described super well. But I felt like the second book, Four Ruined Realms, improved immensely, and that's why it's one of my highlights. I felt like book 1 had potential, and then when I really liked book 2, it felt like I was kind of being rewarded for sticking with it. And I really like it when you have that sort of relationship with a book or a series, when it kind of builds. Yeah, very interested to see what happens in book 3, which is called Three Shattered Souls. Hopefully I'll read that in 2026. Now, book number 5 is Girl, Goddess, Queen by B. Fitzgerald. This is a retelling of the Hades and Persephone story. I had a bit of a Greek mythology phase in my youth, so I've read my fair share over the years of Greek mythology retellings, and I think this is my favourite so far. A little shout out to A Beautiful Evil, which is Fitzgerald's retelling of the Pandora myth. I also read that this year and it's also great, but Girl, Goddess, Queen is the one on the highlights list because I was very invested in Persephone. I found the take on Hades really interesting, such an interesting character. I was engrossed. I recommend. B. Fitzgerald has a third Greek myth retelling called The End Crowns All. This one's about the Trojan War. I have not read that one yet, but I plan to this year. But yeah, I think B. Fitzgerald is a really exciting new author. Well, new to me, because I only discovered it this year. Number 6 now is When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. This one is my favourite fantasy romance that I have read this year. I really loved her style of writing, I loved the characters, and I loved the world. It was so interesting to me, and I feel like this series has so much potential. Book 2 in the series is out this year, and I have pre-ordered it. I have pre-ordered a book. I haven't pre-ordered a book in many years, like at least 10 years, and in I think November I pre-ordered 2 books. This is very exciting to me, and we'll speak about the other book that I pre-ordered later. Number 7 now is Tusk Love by Thea Gwanzon. I have done a full review of this book on my channel, so I will link to that somewhere as well. Basically, it's a romantasy book based on a throwaway comment in Critical Role, the Dungeons & Dragons live play show, and it's been made into an actual real life book by an actual real life author, and Gwanzon has made like a legit really good romantasy book. Definitely a strong highlight for me from last year. The book had to do so much stuff and it did it all. Next up, number 8, I am going to talk about the Fallen Gods trilogy by Hannah Kaner, but I haven't read book 3 yet. Faithbreaker came in from my library holds like a couple of days back, so I'm going to read it in the next week, but I haven't read it yet, so I'm kind of only talking about books 1 and 2 in this video. I had not heard much about this series before I read the books, but I recognise the covers. They are very distinctive covers and I see them everywhere. But this is, with the caveat that I haven't actually read the whole thing yet, my favourite series of 2025. There are quite a few main characters and their stories sort of intertwine, and I really love the way the stories weave in and out. I love a book with some nice story weaving happening. It's got a really nice diverse cast of characters and I love them all, and it's mildly epic and it takes place across a few different locations, and I'm really enjoying the series and I can't wait to read book 3 and finish it. For my penultimate highlight of 2025, number 9, we are moving away from fantasy and romance. My number 9 is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. Clarke wrote Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and Piranesi is her long-awaited second novel, and it's so different. And it's so good. It is speculative fiction, and it's about a man and a world, and you find out more about the man and the world as the story progresses. I don't think I've ever read a book like it. It felt like a mystery I was trying to solve as I read, and it was so engrossing and surprising and moving. Do recommend. Great book. Now we are ending the video with my 10th highlight of 2025 with my favourite book that I read last year, which is Voyage of the Damned by Frances White. I read this book early on in the year. I think it was another January book, but no book has beat it for me. It's a murder mystery on a ship, and everyone on the ship is magical apart from Dee, our main character, who is trying to solve the mystery. I really love Frances White's writing style, for starters. Dee as a character is so vivid and alive, and so many of the other characters are as well. And I didn't think the book was perfect, you know, the plot and the world building, but I think White takes some really big swings and I love it. Her next book is The Bone Door, which is the second book I have pre-ordered, and that looks to be very, very different, which, you know, I love. Back to the big swings again. Yeah, I think she is such an exciting new author, and I will read anything that she writes. She had me from page 1. So, those are my reading highlights from 2025. That was a long but hopefully fun video. Thank you for watching. I am very excited for 2026. I have so far, on the 4th of January, read 1 book this year, so I think it's a good start. I don't think I will manage to read 76 books this year. I think it will be fewer. I mean, I'll be delighted if I read 76, but I will be surprised. You know, I have a new job and I'm going to be working a few more hours, so I'll just have less time. But I am intending to keep up my momentum. I'm planning on reading, you know, every day for at least 10 minutes every day, which is what I did last year. As to what I'll be reading, I've already mentioned a few things that are on my list. I currently have a few non-fiction books in my Libby holds, so I should have more than 1 non-fiction book in my list of read books at the end of 2026. I mean, let's not get too excited. It's not going to be a load, but it will be more than 1. And there's also a bunch of books on my Kobo that I have bought and not had the opportunity to read yet, so fingers crossed I'll get to them this year. I mean, it's always going to be like this though, isn't it? There's always going to be books on my Kobo that I haven't read yet. But I am prioritising the Legendborn cycle by Tracy Deonn and the Dragon Scales series by L.R. Lamb. If you have any recommendations for books for me to read this year, I would love to hear them. Feel free to drop them in the comments below. I'd also love to know what some of your reading highlights of 2025 were, and do you have any thoughts on the books that I talked about today? But yes, thank you again for watching. I hope you have a lovely start to 2026. Here's to a great one, full of good books. And let's move across to the end screen. If you'd like to see my latest video or some more from the Quiet as Mouse book club, then you can do that below me here. And if you'd like to subscribe to my channel or visit my website, then you can do that beside me here. There's also a link to my Patreon page in the description if you fancy checking it out. Take care, stay safe and well, and I will see you very soon.